This video is on parallel and perpendicular lines. There are 4 mini lessons to understanding this overall topic. I will focus on in lesson 1, working out the gradient from 2 sets of coordinates and finding the equations. Okay. Well, so in order to work out the gradient between 2 points, what we could do, if it's 2 minus 1, so 2 minus 1 is there, and 4 minus 4, 3 is here, the gradient is a measure of the steepness of this line. So what you might have already known is that in order to work out the gradient via a graph, you can draw a right angle triangle and work out how many squares up on the y you are, 1, 2, 3, 4, and how many squares across on the x you are, 1, 2. Okay, then you divide the 2, so the gradient between these 2 points is actually 2. Alright, now let's do this without a graph, because the examiner could give you a question where you don't actually have a graph. So what we're going to use to find out the gradient is this formula, and it's dy over dx. What the d stands for is the difference of your y coordinates over the difference of your x coordinates. Now let's just look at this general formula. It says y2 take away y1, then it's x2 over x1. So what the y2 means is we're going to assign one of the coordinates with a y1 and a y2. So I know these are x coordinates. I know these are both y coordinates. So just to identify, we can't label them both x coordinates because they're of both different values. So we're going to call this x1 because it's the first coordinate that we see, and we're going to call this x2. We're going to call this y1. We're going to call this y2. So according to our formula, we take the difference of our y coordinates, which is y2, which is 3, and then we're going to subtract our y1. Now our y1 is a -1, and that's going to be over now the difference between the x coordinates. So x2 is 4 and x1 is 2. Okay, just be careful when you have 3 and you subtract by a -1, that turns into positive. It ends up being 3 plus 1, and the denominator is over 2. Let's just continue. That gives us 4 over 2, and therefore we have 2 as our gradient. Okay, so just make sure you make note of this formula and you understand what y2 and y1 is. I've labelled these x1 and y1 because they come first, and I've labelled this x2 because that's the second coordinates. You could label the other way around, you'd still get the right answer. Okay, so what we're going to try and do now is have a look at another one. Okay, just before that slide, so why don't you give it a go? Once you have done it, we're going to go and try and work out the equation of the line. Okay, so you can pause the video now, or you can just continue watching. Alright, okay, so we're going to label this x1, I'm going to label this one x2, based on the order. I'm going to label this y1, I'm going to label this y2. And so it's the difference of the y coordinates, so that's -2 subtract 5 at the top, and then at the bottom we've got -2 subtract a -4, so we have this double negative rule again. Okay, so we've got now -2 subtract 5 is -7, and we've got -2, let's do a side calculation over here, -2 subtract -4 turns into a plus, and therefore I have -2 plus 4, which is actually 2. So the gradient of the line is -7/2, or negative 3.5. Okay, now what we're going to do is you're going to try and give the next two a go, and then we're going to look at finding the equation of both these lines. You can pause the video now, or have or just continue watching to check your understanding. Okay, first of all, very importantly, we're going to find out our gradients. Now, gradients we can describe as m, because it comes from y equals mx plus c, where m stands for the gradient. First of all, let's label this x1, let's label this x2, let's label this y1, let's label this y2. So the gradients is the difference of the y's over the difference of x, and we start off with our y. So y2 is minus 1. We want to subtract it from y1, which is 4, over x2 is 0. We're going to subtract now this negative 4, which is that. Okay, so our gradient is minus 1 minus 4, which is negative 5. And our denominator, or not, denominator is a minus minus, so it turns into a plus 4. So it's 5 over 4, the gradient. Okay, now we've got this one, so we know that the letter commonly used for gradient is called m. We now know what the difference of y over the difference of x is. It's a calculation to get the gradient. This the 7 we're going to call x1, the y we're going to call the second x we're going to call x2. We're going to call this one y1, we're going to call this one y2, and then we're going to follow the formula from the previous slide. So the difference of y, we start off with y2 first, subtract our negative 4, so we've got a double negative there, over x2, subtract 7. So what we have over here is negative 1 subtract negative 4. Okay, that is negative 1 plus 4, in other words, and 2 minus 7 is minus 5. Okay, and then we've got this negative 1 plus 4, which is 3, over this negative 5. So the whole entire fractions turns into a negative number. So here we've got the gradient, and here we've got the gradient. Okay, so now you can stop there, but in this lesson we are working out the gradient, and therefore we're going to find the equation of the line. So let's go back to our previous question. Okay, we want to get the equation of the line. Okay, so we go back to our very first example. So you're going to need to write the following steps down. So the equation of any line follows the formula y equals mx plus c. Now we already know our m to be, from this calculation, we already know our m is 2 because we worked it out. So we're going to substitute that in. Y is equal to 2x plus c. Now the equation of the line contains a y, it contains an x, and it also contains a constant. That's just a number at the end. So we've got our equation of a line, but what we don't have is our constant. So the question is, how do we find it? So what you need to do is go back and pick out one of the coordinates. So in the question, always remember you are given a set of coordinates where you know the value of x is 2, and when x is 2, y is minus 1. You also know at this point when x is 4, y is 3. So what you need to decide, well, actually I'm going to pick one of these coordinates and substitute them into the y equals mx+c formula. Well, I'm going to choose this coordinate. The reason why I'm going to choose it is because there's no negatives. So I've got 4 and 3. So let's go back to the equation of a line. So we've got y equals mx plus c. And you've got the coordinates already. let you know. Let's just extend this page. So remember the coordinates we had. Let's just double check. Yeah, we've got 4 and 3. So let's put 4 and 3 into our formula. So we got 4 and 3 there. Well, 4, remember, is the x, 3 is the y. So what you're going to do, you're going to replace them into the formula so we can work out this c. So y is 3, 4 is x, so we've got 2 amounts of 4, and then we've got plus c. So now I'm going to start to solve this equation. Let's do 2 times by 4 first, which is 8. And then we're going to plus c. And then we're going to take the 8 over, which is going to give me c. So 3 take away 8 is minus 5. And now we know that minus 5 is c. So what we will do is we're going to replace that back into our formula, which we have here. I'm going to rub out that c now because we know what it is, and therefore it equals to plus, not plus, but minus 5. Okay, so that is how you would find the equation of the line. You can now try it with the other questions that are in the video and see if you can generate y equals mx plus c.